The impossible weapon. Admiral Marcus Chen stood motionless before the holographic display, watching another human colony vanish in a flash of light. The Vraxian battleship's energy lance had cut through Callisto Station like it was made of paper rather than reinforced titanium and carbon composites. 30,000 civilians. Gone in seconds. "That's the fourth colony this month," said Commander Elena Reyes, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. The war room fell silent save for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. 7 high-ranking officers sat around the oval table, each face grim with the knowledge that humanity was running out of options. "The Vraxians have superior technology in every measurable way," General Kozlov stated flatly. "Their energy weapons draw power directly from their ship's fusion cores. We can't match their output or their range." Elena stepped forward, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of the tactical display. "What if we could access a power source greater than fusion?" The room turned to her, confusion and curiosity mingling on tired faces. "With all due respect, Commander, if you're suggesting antimatter again, we've been through this. The containment issues," Admiral Chen began. "Not antimatter," Elena interrupted. She tapped her datapad, replacing the grim footage of Callisto's destruction with complex schematics. Something more ambitious. Project Helios. Displayed above the table was the design for a ship unlike any Earth had built before. Sleek, predatory, with massive arrays extending from its hull like the petals of some deadly flower. "A Star Eater," Elena said simply. The silence deepened, then broke as several officers spoke at once. "Impossible. You can't be serious." The energy requirements alone ruled. "It was impossible," came a quiet voice from the doorway. All heads turned to see Dr. Aisha Rahman enter the room. Small in stature, but carrying herself with unshakable confidence, she placed her tablet on the table. Until now, Dr. Rahman had been a controversial figure in the scientific community even before the war. Brilliant but unorthodox in her approaches to quantum physics, when the Vraxians arrived, she'd been pulled from university research and thrust into weapons development. "My team has solved the quantum compression problem," she explained, bringing up a series of equations. "We can create a contained dimensional pocket that pulls stellar matter through a controlled micro-wormhole. The energy output would dwarf anything the Vraxians have shown us." Chen studied the calculations with narrowed eyes. "And you're certain this will work?" "The math is sound," Rahman replied. "We've successfully tested it at microscale, harvesting energy from plasma in our lab." "But stars?" General Kozlov looked skeptical. "The jump from lab plasma to stellar material is considerable," Rahman acknowledged. "But the principles are identical. Scale is our only remaining challenge." Commander Reyes stepped forward again. "This could give us the advantage we need. The Vraxians wouldn't expect it. They haven't shown any technology that manipulates space-time to this degree." "At what cost?" Captain Nguyen finally spoke, her voice soft but penetrating. "We're talking about consuming stars. There are ethical implications we cannot ignore." Dr. Rahman's expression remained composed. "The initial tests would use only brown dwarfs, failed stars with no habitable systems. We've mapped 14 within striking distance of Earth-controlled space." The room erupted into debate. Some officers argued passionately against creating such a weapon, while others insisted it might be humanity's only hope for survival. Admiral Chen let them talk, knowing this decision would change the course of human history. The heated discussion continued until Lieutenant Park burst into the room, face ashen. "Sir, emergency transmission from Europa Colony." Chen inserted the data chip into the console. The hologram shifted to show static, then cleared to reveal the face of Governor Malik. Behind him, alarms blared and people screamed. "They're here," Malik said, his voice breaking. "A Vraxian fleet just appeared, dozens of ships. Our defenses won't hold." The transmission cut to show Europa Colony's main habitat dome. The massive structure, home to 5 million civilians, was surrounded by alien vessels. Before anyone could speak, lances of energy tore through the dome. The atmosphere vented violently into space, carrying with it thousands of bodies. The transmission died. Captain Nguyen covered her mouth with her hand, horror evident in her eyes. 5 million people. Gone. Admiral Chen closed his eyes briefly, allowing himself one moment of grief before straightening his shoulders. The Vraxians have made their intentions clear, he said quietly. They will not stop until humanity is extinct. We no longer have the luxury of ethical debates. He turned to Dr. Raman. How quickly can you build this ship? With unlimited resources and priority access to the orbital shipyards. 8 months, she answered. Chen nodded once. You have 6. Sir, General Kozlov protested. Even if we can build this ship, who would crew it? The technology is untested. It could be a suicide mission. I already have volunteers, Commander Reyes replied. People who lost family at Callisto, Mars Outpost, and now Europa. They understand what's at stake. Admiral Chen stared at the ship design hovering above the table. It no longer looked like a vessel of exploration or even conventional warfare. It was a predator designed to consume the very energy of stars. Project Helios is approved, he declared, his voice heavy with the weight of necessity. Dr. Raman, you have your authorization. Commander Reyes, assemble your crew. As the meeting ended and the officers filed out, Chen remained, staring at the holographic ship, the blue light of the display reflected in his tired eyes. May whatever gods remain forgive us for what we're about to do. Dr. Aisha Raman watched the numbers on her screen with unwavering focus, her hands moving quickly over the control panel as she made minute adjustments to the quantum stabilizers. Containment field holding at 89%, she reported, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. That's the highest we've achieved so far. Chief Engineer Takahashi looked up from his workstation, dark circles under his eyes after working for 3 days straight. Still not enough. We need at least 95% stability before we can scale up to the main reactor. Their laboratory was built inside Luna Station Delta, a hidden facility far from normal shipping lanes. Through the reinforced windows, construction drones swarmed around the massive frame of the experimental ship taking shape in the orbital shipyard. 4 months into the project, and they were behind schedule. Raman stood and stretched her back. Let's try increasing the particle density in the secondary chamber. Takahashi nodded and began typing commands. Running simulation first. The holographic display between them lit up, showing a swirling mass of energy contained within nested fields of force. As they watched, the simulation showed the energy growing more stable, the violent red pulses fading to a steady blue glow. It's working, Raman whispered. Look at this. The containment field is holding steady at 94%. Takahashi's tired face broke into a rare smile. Let's test it on the real prototype. They walked together through the connecting corridor to the main testing chamber. The room was circular with a reinforced observation deck overlooking the spherical device, surrounded by complex machinery. This was the heart of Project Helios. 3 other scientists looked up as they entered. Raman quickly explained their new approach. If this works, she said, we'll be ready to install the core in the ship within 3 weeks. Everyone moved to their stations as Takahashi began the countdown. Particle injection in 3, 2, 1. The sphere in the center of the room began to glow. Inside, highly concentrated plasma swirled faster and faster as the containment field shaped it into precise patterns. The energy readings climbed rapidly. 90%, called out one of the technicians. 91%, 92%. Raman held her breath. 94% stability achieved. The team broke into cheers, but Takahashi raised his hand for quiet. Hold on. Let's see if it maintains. They watched anxiously as the seconds ticked by. The containment field fluctuated slightly but remained above 93%. 1 minute of stable containment, Raman announced finally. We did it. The door to the lab slid open, and Commander Reyes walked in, her military uniform a stark contrast to the lab coats. She nodded, seeing their excited faces. "Good news, I hope." Rahman quickly explained their breakthrough. Reyes's serious expression softened slightly. "Excellent work. Admiral Chen will be pleased." She walked to the viewing window that overlooked the shipyard. "Come see your creation." The scientists joined her at the window. Below them, the massive frame of the ship was now clearly taking shape, nearly half a kilometer long. Its dark hull plates were being attached by construction drones that looked tiny against its enormous size. "It's beautiful," Rahman said softly. "And deadly," added Takahashi. "With our core technology, it will be the most powerful weapon humanity has ever created." Reyes nodded. "That's why we're calling it the Prometheus, after the Titan who stole fire from the gods." "A fitting name," Rahman said, "for what we're about to unleash." Commander Reyes turned to face the team. "The Vraxians destroyed another colony yesterday. New Mumbai station. 3 million dead." Her voice was flat, controlled, but her eyes showed her anger. "We don't have the luxury of time. How soon can you have the full-size core ready?" Rahman and Takahashi exchanged glances. "With this breakthrough, 3 weeks to build, another week to install and test." "Make it 2 weeks, Reyes said. "Our scouts report Vraxian fleets gathering near Mars. Earth could be next." After she left, the scientists returned to work with renewed urgency. Rahman stared at the test core, its blue glow casting strange shadows across her face. "Do you ever wonder if we should be building this?" she asked Takahashi quietly. The engineer was silent for a moment. "My husband and daughter were on Europa when it fell," he finally said. "I don't have the luxury of moral questions anymore." Rahman nodded. She understood. They all did. This wasn't just a scientific achievement anymore. It was survival. For the next 2 weeks, the team barely slept. The core grew larger, the containment field stronger. Finally, the day came to install it in the ship. Rahman stood on the observation platform as the massive sphere was carefully moved into position at the center of Prometheus. The ship's interior was designed around this single component, the heart that would allow it to consume stars. "Containment field at 95% and holding," reported a technician. Commander Reyes joined her, watching as the final connections were made. "It's almost alive, isn't it?" she said, studying the vessel's sleek, predatory lines. "A perfect hunter." Rahman nodded. "And now we just need to find it prey." The Fire Eaters. Captain Julian Vega stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed his crew. They were an unusual collection. Scientists mixed with military personnel, all volunteers, all with personal reasons to hate the Vraxians. Most had lost family in the attacks on human colonies. All were willing to die if it meant giving Earth a fighting chance. "Status report," he ordered, his voice carrying the slight accent of the Mars colonies where he'd been born. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied Lieutenant Commander Zhou Chen from her station. "Engineering reports the core is stable at 96%. Weapons systems are online and calibrated." Vega nodded. "Navigation. Course plotted to target system V479, answered Navigator Park. ETA 16 hours at current speed." V479 was an uninhabited system with a solitary brown dwarf star, perfect for their first real test. The Prometheus had performed well in simulations, but this would be the first time they attempted to harvest energy directly from a stellar body. "Very good. Maintain course and speed." Dr. Rahman entered the bridge, datapad in hand. Unlike many of the scientists, she'd insisted on being part of the mission. This was her creation. She wanted to see it through. "Captain, may I have a word?" Vega gestured to his ready room, and they stepped inside. The small office was spartanly furnished. Just a desk, 2 chairs, and a viewport that currently showed the endless black of space, streaked with the distortion of FTL travel. "What's on your mind, Doctor?" Raman handed him the datapad. I've been running additional simulations on the harvesting process. Based on the latest calculations, we should limit our initial extraction to no more than 12% of the brown dwarf's mass. Vega raised an eyebrow. The mission parameters called for a 20% extraction to fully charge our systems. I know, Raman said, but I'm concerned about unforeseen gravitational effects. This is new territory, Captain. We should proceed cautiously. Vega studied the data, then nodded slowly. Agreed. We'll start with 10% and monitor the effects closely. Thank you, Captain. As they returned to the bridge, a soft alarm chimed from the tactical station. Captain, we're detecting an unidentified vessel at the edge of our sensor range, reported Tactical Officer Dubois. Configuration matches known Vraxian scout ships. Vega moved swiftly to the tactical display. Have they detected us? Dubois shook her head. Uncertain. They're maintaining position, not approaching or retreating. Standard patrol pattern. Can we avoid them? Navigator Park studied his instruments. Not without significant course change, sir. That would delay our arrival by at least 12 hours. Vega considered this. The Prometheus was designed for combat, but they hadn't planned to engage the enemy on this first mission. The ship's weapon systems were untested in real conditions. Maintain course, he decided, but go to silent running. Minimum emissions. The bridge lights dimmed as the ship shifted to stealth mode, reducing its energy signature to avoid detection. For several tense minutes, everyone watched the tactical display as the Prometheus crept past the Vraxian patrol. They're turning, Dubois announced suddenly, heading directly toward us. I think they've spotted us, sir. Vega frowned. Options. We can outrun them, Chen suggested. Even at silent running, our engines are superior. If we run, they'll report our position, Dubois countered. We lose the element of surprise for future operations. Vega made his decision. Bring weapons online. Target their communication array only. We disable them, then continue to our destination. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for their first encounter with the enemy. On the view screen, the Vraxian scout grew larger, a sleek insectoid vessel with forward-swept wings, and what looked like glowing veins running across its dark hull. Within weapons range in 30 seconds, Dubois reported. They're scanning us, Raman observed, watching the sensor readings. They seem confused. I don't think they recognize our configuration. Let's keep it that way, Vega said grimly. Fire when ready, Lieutenant. The Prometheus's conventional weapons, high-powered energy lances derived from Vraxian technology captured in earlier battles, lashed out. The beams struck the scout ship precisely where Dubois had aimed, severing its communication array. Direct hit, she confirmed. Their comms are offline. But instead of retreating, the Vraxian vessel suddenly accelerated toward them, weapon ports opening along its hull. Evasive maneuvers, Vega ordered. The Prometheus banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the first volley of Vraxian energy weapons. The second caught them on the port side, causing the ship to shudder. Shields holding at 94%, Chen reported. Minimal damage. Return fire. Full weapons spread. This time, the Prometheus unleashed its full conventional arsenal. Energy beams and guided projectiles slammed into the Vraxian scout. The smaller ship rocked under the assault, but continued its attack run. Their shields are at 60% and falling, Dubois announced, but they're still coming. Vega watched the tactical display with growing concern. The scout was more resilient than intelligence had suggested. If they couldn't quickly disable it, they might need to use the Prometheus's primary weapon, the Star Harvester, before they were ready. Target their propulsion systems, he ordered. Everything we've got. The Prometheus fired again, concentrating all weapons on the Vraxian vessel's engines. This time, the effect was immediate. The scout's propulsion flared brilliantly, then died, leaving it drifting in space. Direct hit. Their engines are offline, Dubois confirmed. They're dead in space, sir. Vega allowed himself a small smile. Well done, Lieutenant. Damage report. Minor damage to port shielding, Chen replied. Being repaired now. No casualties. Sir, Dubois interrupted. The Vraxian ship is activating some sort of beacon. It's not standard communications, more like a distress signal. Vega exchanged a look with Raman. They couldn't allow the Vraxians to report the Prometheus's existence. We need to destroy it, he said quietly. Raman nodded reluctantly. There's no alternative, Captain. Lieutenant Dubois, finish it. The tactical officer hesitated for just a moment, then fired a final volley. The Vraxian scout erupted into a ball of flame, quickly extinguished in the vacuum of space. Silence fell over the bridge. They had just claimed their first Vraxian casualties. Resume course to V-479, Vega ordered, his voice somber. And maintain silent running. Where there's one scout, there may be others. 16 hours later, the Prometheus dropped out of FTL at the edge of System V-479. At the center of their view screen hung the brown dwarf, a dim, reddish orb that barely illuminated the surrounding space. Standard orbit established, Park announced. Distance to target, 50,000 kilometers. Vega nodded. Dr. Raman, are we ready to begin the harvesting procedure? Raman stood at the science station, running final checks on the core systems. All systems green, Captain. The harvester arrays are deployed and calibrated. Very good. Vega addressed the entire bridge. This is what we came for. What we've trained for. I don't need to remind you that what we're about to attempt has never been done before. Stay focused on your duties. Remember why we're here. He could see the tension on their faces, mixed with determination. They all knew the stakes. Begin pre-harvesting sequence, he ordered. The ship hummed with power as specialized equipment came online. On the view screen, a web of faint blue light began to extend from the Prometheus toward the brown dwarf. Containment fields at maximum, reported Officer Chen. Core stabilizers online. Vega took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. If the ship's systems failed now, they would all die instantly, vaporized by the very stellar energy they were trying to capture. Initiate harvesting sequence. Lieutenant Commander Chen's fingers moved with purpose, activating the sequence they had practiced hundreds of times in simulation. The blue web on the view screen pulsed and expanded, surrounding a section of the brown dwarf's outer layer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship shuddered violently. Captain, something's happening. Chen called out, her eyes wide as she stared at her readings. The stellar matter. It's flowing into the collection chambers. On the view screen, they could see streams of glowing plasma being pulled from the brown dwarf, flowing along the energy web and into the ship. The Prometheus shuddered again, more violently this time. Containment fields holding at 91%, Raman reported, her voice tight with concentration. Energy levels rising rapidly. The lights on the bridge flickered, then grew brighter. The hum of the engines deepened to a powerful roar that they could feel in their bones. Power levels exceeding projections by 175%, Chen announced, professional tone giving way to awe. Core energy storage at 15%, 20%, 30%. The view screen automatically adjusted its brightness as the flow of stellar material increased. Outside, the section of the brown dwarf connected to their energy web began to visibly collapse, its matter streaming toward the Prometheus like water down a drain. This is incredible, Raman whispered, staring at her readings. This is beyond anything we projected. Another violent shudder ran through the ship. Warning lights flashed at several stations. Structural integrity holding, reported the engineering officer, but we're experiencing strain on the forward sections. Containment field fluctuating. Raman added urgently, 89%, 87%. Vega made a quick decision. Reduce harvesting rate by 30%. We need to find the right balance. Chen adjusted the controls, and the ship's shuddering eased somewhat. The flow of stellar material slowed but remained steady, containment fields stabilizing at 92%, Raman announced with relief. Core storage continuing to fill at a more manageable rate. Vega watched the brown dwarf on the view screen. A visible depression had formed where their energy web connected, as if a giant mouth was taking bites from the star's surface. "Will it completely collapse?" he asked Raman quietly. She nodded. "Eventually. We're disrupting its gravitational balance. Once we leave, it will likely collapse entirely within a few days." The implications hung heavily in the air. They had created something that could destroy stars, a weapon of unimaginable power. Core storage at 75%, Chen reported. Weapon systems coming online automatically. New displays lit up across the bridge, showing weapon configurations that had never before been possible for a human vessel. The Prometheus wasn't just absorbing energy, it was transforming into something new. Engine capabilities now at 400% of maximum rated output, the engineering officer said with disbelief. We could reach Earth in hours instead of days. As the core storage approached 90%, the reduced target they had set, Vega gave the order to disengage. The energy web retracted, leaving the brown dwarf visibly diminished and unstable. "Set course for rendezvous coordinates," he ordered. "It's time to report our success." As the Prometheus turned away from the dying star, Vega caught Raman's eyes. They both understood what they had just witnessed, the birth of a power that could save humanity, or unleash terrible destruction upon the galaxy. Which it would be remained to be seen. Burning bright. The emergency transmission came just as the Prometheus was preparing to return to Earth space. Captain Vega was in his quarters reviewing performance data when the bridge called. "Captain to the bridge, Priority 1. Lieutenant Commander Chen's voice carried unmistakable urgency. When Vega arrived, the main view screen displayed Admiral Chen, his face drawn with exhaustion, and what looked like a fresh cut above his left eye. Smoke filled the background of the transmission. "Captain Vega," the Admiral's voice crackled through static. "The Vraxians have launched a major offensive. They've broken through the Mars defense perimeter with a fleet 3 times the size of our intelligence estimates." Vega felt the blood drain from his face. "Casualties. Heavy. We've lost 60% of the Mars defense fleet. The orbital platforms are gone. Ground defenses are still holding in Olympus City and Mariner Valley, but they won't last long without support." The Admiral leaned closer to the camera. "We're mobilizing everything we have, but most of our ships are days away. Prometheus is our only asset that can reach Mars in time to make a difference. We'll get underway immediately, Admiral." "Captain," Chen said, his voice lowering, "you need to understand what we're asking. The Vraxian fleet numbers over 200 vessels, including at least 3 dreadnoughts. Prometheus is untested in major combat operations. What are our orders, sir? Engage the enemy by any means necessary. Use the harvester. Find a way to buy Earth time to prepare its defenses." Vega understood what wasn't being said. This was a potential suicide mission. "Understood, Admiral. We won't let you down." As the transmission ended, Vega turned to his bridge crew. He could see in their faces that they grasped the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "Set course for Mars, maximum speed. All hands to battle stations. Department heads to the conference room in 10 minutes. The conference room was tense as Vega outlined the situation to his senior staff. "This will not be a conventional engagement," he concluded. "We are outnumbered, and despite our new technology, untested in full-scale combat. Dr. Raman, I need options for the harvester." Raman brought up a holographic display of the Mars system. "There are several possibilities, none of them ideal. We could use the harvester on Sol itself, but at this distance, the power drain would be immense, and the effects on Earth's sun unpredictable." "Unacceptable," Vega said immediately. "Next option. We could target Phobos or Deimos, Mars moons. They're not stellar bodies, but the Harvester might be able to break them down into usable energy. Tactical Officer Dubois shook her head. Both moons have research bases and mining operations, thousands of civilians. What about using it on the Vraxian ships directly? Asked Navigator Park. Raman considered this. Possible, but risky. The Harvester was designed for stellar material. Using it on ships might be less efficient, and we'd need to get dangerously close. Vega studied the holographic display. What about here? He pointed to a region of space between Mars and the Vraxian fleet, the asteroid belt. Raman looked confused. Know this. Vega zoomed in on a small bright point. According to the chart, this is a captured comet that's been in orbit around Mars for the last decade, primarily ice and frozen gases. Raman's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, that could work. The molecular density is much lower than a star, but the fundamental principles apply. We could create a localized reaction, superheating the comet's mass and directing the energy outward. Like a bomb, Dubois said. More like a directed solar flare, Raman corrected. If we position correctly, we could target the majority of the Vraxian fleet while minimizing damage to Mars. Vega nodded slowly. Calculate the exact positioning we would need. I want options ready by the time we arrive. The Prometheus dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Mars system 17 hours later. The scene that greeted them was one of devastation. Debris from destroyed Earth vessels and orbital platforms littered the space around the red planet. In the distance, the Vraxian armada hung in orbit, their ships arranged in attack formations as ground assaults continued. Status of Mars defenses, Vega asked. Ground-based shields are holding over the major cities, Chen reported, but they're weakening. Orbital defenses are almost completely destroyed. Remaining Earth vessels are regrouping on the far side of the planet. Have the Vraxians detected us? Not yet, sir. We're at extreme range and maintaining stealth protocols. Vega turned to Raman. Doctor, is the Harvester ready? She nodded, her face pale but determined. Yes, Captain. We've calibrated it for the comet's composition. Optimal position would be here. She indicated a point on the tactical display roughly equidistant between Mars and the Vraxian fleet. Very good. Navigator, set course. Tactical, prepare conventional weapons. We'll need to defend ourselves while the Harvester powers up. The Prometheus moved silently through the debris field, using the wreckage of Earth ships as cover. They were halfway to their target position when alarms sounded across the bridge. We've been detected, Dubois announced. Multiple Vraxian vessels breaking formation to intercept. On the view screen, a dozen enemy ships could be seen accelerating toward them, weapon systems charging. Time to target position. 4 minutes at current speed, Park replied. That's too long, Vega muttered. Increase to emergency speed. Shields at maximum. The Prometheus surged forward, abandoning stealth for raw speed. The first volley of Vraxian weapons fire caught them as they cleared the debris field, striking their port side. The ship rocked violently. Shields at 82%, Chen reported. Minor damage to outer hull plating. Return fire, all conventional weapons. Focus on delaying them, not destruction. The Prometheus's weapons blazed in response, striking the lead Vraxian vessels. 2 smaller ships spun away, damaged but not destroyed. The others pressed their attack. 60 seconds to optimal position, Park announced as the ship shuddered under another barrage. Shields at 64%, Chen called out. We can't take much more of this. Prepare the Harvester, Vega ordered. Target that comet. Raman's fingers flew over her console. Harvester arrays deploying. Containment fields at maximum. On the view screen, the familiar blue energy web began to extend from the Prometheus toward the nearby comet, a dirty snowball nearly 2 kilometers across. Vraxian commander hailing us. Communications officer Emery announced. Put them through, Vega said. Visual only from our side. The view screen split, one half showing the approaching Vraxian vessels, the other displaying the alien commander. The Vraxians were insectoid in appearance, with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple compound eyes that gleamed with intelligence. "Human vessel," the translated voice buzzed. "Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. This is Captain Julian Vega of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We will not surrender. I offer you one chance to retreat from Mars space immediately." The Vraxians' mandibles clicked in what humans had learned to recognize as laughter. "You are either brave or insane to threaten us with a single ship." "This isn't a conventional ship," Vega replied evenly. "And this isn't a threat. It's a promise." He cut the transmission as they reached optimal position. The Vraxian vessels were closing rapidly, weapons charging for another volley. "Initiate harvesting sequence," Vega ordered. "Full power." The blue energy web surrounding the comet pulsed with light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the comet began to glow, its icy surface turning incandescent, as the harvester began pulling its matter into the Prometheus. "Energy transfer commencing," Raman reported. "Core charging at unprecedented rates. The comet's composition is more energy-dense than we calculated." The ship began to vibrate as power flooded into its systems. Outside, the comet was visibly shrinking, its mass converted into pure energy. "Containment fields at 96% and holding," Chen announced. "Core charge at 60% and rising rapidly." The approaching Vraxian vessels slowed, clearly confused by what they were witnessing. Their sensors would be detecting the massive energy buildup, but wouldn't understand its purpose. "They're regrouping," Dubois observed. "The main fleet is moving to support the interceptors." Perfect, Vega thought. The more concentrated they were, the more effective the Prometheus would be. "Core charge at 85%, Chen reported. "Weapons systems reconfiguring automatically." New tactical displays appeared, showing options that hadn't existed before. The harvested energy wasn't just being stored. It was being channeled into weapons systems beyond anything humans had previously wielded. "Optimal firing solution calculated," Dubois announced. "Ready on your command." The comet was now less than half its original size, its remaining mass glowing like a miniature sun. The Vraxian fleet had formed a wedge formation, preparing for a coordinated attack. "Core charge at 95%, Chen said. "Maximum capacity imminent." Vega rose from his chair, standing tall as he faced the view screen. "Target the center of the Vraxian formation. Fire primary weapons array." The Prometheus shuddered as energy surged through its systems. From its bow, a beam of blinding